Hello and welcome to the James Granstrom podcast. Today, I am so delighted to have my special guest, George Kao, here with us today. George is an author of 4 incredible books, one of which is Joyful Productivity for Solopreneurs. He's an authentic business coach. He's a conscious marketing teacher and genius from what I've come across so far. And George, in my eyes, has redefined what it takes to really succeed with heart and soul as a solopreneur. And he has a wealth of content available on YouTube and on Instagram and social media. I'd just like to welcome our super soul model guest this week, George Kao. Thank you, George, for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you so much, James. If I were modeling anything, I'm not sure it would be the physical, but certainly I'm hoping that I'm modeling a way of doing business, a way of showing up in the world on social media, building an audience of what I call true fans, or just people who really connect with one's energy signature. And I hope to kind of model the consistency of creativity that I think is possible for all of us. So I'm really grateful to be here with you. Thanks for providing this opportunity.
Thank you, George. Thank you. And, my intention with today's episode is to really understand what George brings to the table, so you guys listening can really sort of tap into what's behind what it takes to not only really succeed, but to really come from a place of heart and soul, authenticity, which George is all about. And of course, from a place of like happiness, because unless you're doing something that you love, the well-being isn't going to flow. I noticed that when I've, been struggling in the past, and, we've all had our trials and tribulations, but, one thing I know for sure, and this is one of the reasons why I asked and was blessed that George said yes to come onto this podcast, was because I heard him speak and I was like, wow, this guy is really speaking truth. And when I personally really believe that the world is really crying out for people who are being authentic and truthful, because you can see behind the facade of certain things nowadays.
Yeah.
And, businesses are all being called to be a little bit more conscious.
Yes.
We are called to be a little bit more conscious and a bit more awake, so that, we leave the residue of the old behind, so this new, like, amazing version of yourself can just emerge in a beautiful space. And George, I think you really help a lot of people. I know you've helped hundreds of thousands of people with your content, and, you coach a lot of people as well. So George, I just wanted to ask you, if I may, how did your journey start of becoming, not only a business coach, but you even given yourself the title of an authentic business coach? Because I don't see that everywhere. So how did that journey start for you?
No, I appreciate the question. And I think the story of my journey, I think, is instructive in that we see it happening online now with influencers. So I started out in 2009 in my business, partly because I was very impatient and couldn't get a job after the downturn in 2008. And so I'm like, I might as well, start helping my friends and my colleagues with social media. And they said, wow, you seem to be really good at this. Maybe you should, start helping this, start charging for this kind of thing. Because I'm just helping people out, which is also instructive for any of you who enjoy helping others, your friends and your colleagues, with various skills. And, if you find yourself naturally doing that, and like naturally noticing something and go, well, let me help you with that, maybe, naturally having an opinion and advice about certain things that is helpful for their personal or professional life, consider, moving in that direction, consider, offering that service as a possibility. Anyway, so because I was good at social media in the early days of social media, I was able to build an audience relatively quickly just with what I knew and what I did. And I started learning from the mainstream internet marketers how to sell, how to convert people from audience to customers. And I did all the things that, they taught me, the scarcity tactics, the manipulation, essentially. So much of which is under the radar. We don't realize that's what's being done to us. Once we start studying persuasion psychology and things like that, we go, oh my gosh, a lot of things, a lot of the emails we're subscribed to or the ads we see online are using a lot of these tactics, webinars we might attend.
It feels
And
like you're
so,
kind of being pushed into doing something rather than it being
yeah,
natural. Yeah.
and cleverly, I would say hypnotized,
Yeah.
and manipulated essentially. So charmed, hypnotized, pressured in some cases into buying, fear of missing out, a lot of that kind of stuff. And I was doing that stuff because that's what I thought. I didn't know any better. That was who I was learning from. And I did those things successfully. So from 2009 to 2013, I was doing that kind of thing successfully. I made quite a bit of money doing that. But all along the way, I felt uncomfortable with these things. I didn't know if there's any better way. I just thought that successful people, quote unquote, are doing that. And they're teaching me that. That must be the way to do it. And I had a breakdown, a spiritual breakdown, and I would say a breakthrough, around that time, where I said, I can't do this anymore. Even if it makes money, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I don't want to feel like I'm manipulating people. I want to really connect authentically with people. I want an audience that I actually care about. And I feel they really care about me rather than doing things because I'm making, scarcity offers or things like that. So I basically shut down my business, almost overnight. And I just spent months searching my soul. The question that wouldn't leave me, some reason this question came to me. And it was, what if you only had 6 months left to live? How would you operate your life? How would you show up in the world? Now, I'm grateful that I didn't, get any kind of diagnosis or anything like that. I don't know why that question just was really strong in my heart. Couldn't let it go, really sat with that and said, well, 6 months is interesting because it's not like I'm going to die tomorrow. And then I would just throw everything to the wind and maybe enjoy my life for the next few days before that. But it's like 6 months. Okay, I still have enough life where I still want to show up and try to make a difference. But, so I still had to show up and be diligent in my work. So just enough of a window where I still want to contribute. So that I realized if that was the case, then I want to really experiment with what would it be like if I just showed up with my genuine heart of caring, because I always had that heart, but it was suppressed in the marketing world because I thought I had to do things a certain way.
Yeah, it's like I really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that, George. It feels like that your heart's open, but when you're doing something that doesn't quite feel right, number one, you don't sleep well at night. That I know that for
right.
sure.
Yes.
Because when I used to party all night long, I'd come back and it'd be like 5 days, and then I'd be like, I'm going to do it all again. And I'm like,
Oof.
why am I doing this all again? And it's like this loop of lunacy. But it's
Mm,
also when you're not doing something right, it's like your heart closes down, and then your mind is the only driver, and that's great, but it's not great if it's not with the heart. So you got to have
yeah.
the mind and heart working, in harmony. So asking that
Yeah.
question, if I've got 6 months to live, how can I really show up is a really powerful question. So what did you do next?
Well, so I just started my business over in a much more humble way, just serving clients one to one, and in terms of online presence, I just showed up and spoke what I felt was my truth, and not caring if there were many likes or anything like that.
Yeah.
Um, and and in those early days, so I started doing that in basically 2015. I started showing up authentically online. By the way, before then, I was really shy about being on video, so I never really did much video before
Yeah.
2015. But I said, heck, because I always thought, I'm not a supermodel. I don't deserve to be on camera. Maybe I can write a little bit, but even with writing, I was very uh, resistant to it. I just didn't really create much content before 2015. In terms of the writing, we immigrated to America when I was 7 years old. So I was just learning how to speak. I came from Taiwan, and was speaking Chinese there, and it's like I'm now learning a different language, and I was in a mostly white neighborhood in school, and I was bullied for not being able to communicate the native language here. And
No
so
wonder
I
you're going
grew
to feel
up,
shy because of that. You're naturally going to feel shy if you
of
can't
course.
communicate.
Yeah, I was like one of like two Asians in the whole school, and one of like probably 20 minorities in my class. And it was just so I grew up having traumatic experiences of communication, not knowing how to write, not knowing how to speak, being shy about speaking up. Now you might be surprised because you can't get me off camera now. It's like, right?
I mean, you've actually answered kind of what my next question was, which was, like, how have you turned, a real
Yes.
traumatic experience or an adversity and
Yeah.
pivoted from it? And you kind of answered my next question, George. So,
Well,
because that
it,
sounds like you've really turned, like, not being able to speak and coming from a foreign, another country,
yes.
coming to
Yeah.
the States, having to learn a new language, having
Yeah.
to fit in and find a way to fit
Yes.
in, and then like going, right, I'm now going to turn my understanding of what drives me or my passion into communicating, which was what you weren't doing at all.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's it was that question that came back to. It's like, if I don't have much time left to live, which by the way, none of us do. This life is remarkably short. The more we look back, I'm like, my goodness, where's my life gone? And how long do each of us have to live? Of course, we all hope we live till 100, 120 these days, maybe, but who knows? I could be struck with some illness the next, month or whatever. Of course, these days with the pandemic, none of us know. And so the life is so precious. And there's that old quote, that don't die with that song unsung.
Yeah.
Like we need to get out there. So that question made me realize, yes, I'm shy on camera. Yes, I've been shy about communicating my heart and my truth and showing up just as I am, with the faith that the ones that are meant for me will hear my voice and will see who I am and resonate with just that energy signature. And James, the way you introduced this was perfect, because you're my people. Like it could, like you literally said, you heard me, and you heard some resonance. And by the way, lots of people heard that same episode, and few people reached out to me. Very few. I mean, I'm sure some people resonated but didn't reach out. But that's the point: is that all of us have our people out there that once they hear us or see us or read our writing or whatever it is we're showing up, they will resonate. They will resonate. And so it's our opportunity, and in some way our responsibility, right, to find our soul group again. It's almost like we were all born in different places in the world, and at slightly different times, and it was our adventure in this lifetime to find each other again. And
So
yeah.
I totally agree. I don't think like you have to find them. I just think you just magnetize them in.
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
magnet,
Yeah.
and I magnetize all the good
Allow
stuff.
yourself to be found.
Yeah. That's kind of like,
Yeah.
someone
Yeah.
said to me, I've been really trying to find a partner or such. I said, don't worry, they'll find you. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
really? Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, that's a very different way of, no, I've got to, do this, that, and the other. I was like, no, don't
Yeah.
worry, they'll find you. When the
Yeah.
time's
Yeah.
right, they'll find you, because you're
Right.
not repelling it by your neediness. So when you're
Right.
ready, you'll find the right thing. I just wanted to I'll ask you a question, actually, just a quick backtrack before we answer the next question, which was, during that time, between 2009 and 2013, is it,
Yeah.
that you were
Yeah.
having that, you were going down the old path, the path of contrast, I like to call it.
Mm.
And we all go through it, and a lot of people have to experience this to come out the other side. How was your health during that period of time?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked.
because this is a real correlation that I
Yes,
keep finding,
it
and that I always love to share on this podcast, because
yeah.
I'm a person who spots patterns, and
Mm,
I break those patterns when I notice that they are incongruent.
yes.
And one of my blessings is that I've been able to be extremely well for 20 years, and
Wow,
and I haven't really been ill in that time at all.
that's
and
incredible.
and and I understand why. I'm not saying that I'm
Yeah.
invincible, but what I'm saying is that I understand the reasons of what keeps me well, and I can share that with other people because I see the patterns of the
Mm,
misalignment of energy. So I spot a pattern of misalignment of energy during that time when you weren't being authentic, which is a misalignment of energy. So I'm asking
absolutely.
you, what happened during that time with your health?
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting question. I've never been asked that. I have spoken about it, never been occasionally, but I'm thank you for letting me share. So indeed, I do notice that since around 2015 or so, I have rarely gotten sick.
Boom, right there. And the reason
Yeah,
why you have been well during that time is because not only is your heart open and you're doing something that you love and enjoy, but there's
yes,
no resistance in it because you don't feel like you're
yes,
doing something that's killing your soul. And people
yeah,
say, "Oh, what's my soul?" Is your soul is the bit that makes you feel infinite, gives you freedom, gives you joy, gives you
yeah,
expression, makes you
yes,
unique. And whether that's hiking a mountain or being able to communicate on stage, if you're a rapper, or if you're someone who's able to play the guitar or paint paintings, whatever that
yeah.
expression is that's unique to you, which is your own signature, that will always keep you well. That's why some of the old rock stars that are still alive today,
That's right.
come on, how is
Yes,
that person still alive?
right.
Because the joy is flowing. That's the reason.
As long as you don't do too many drugs, you
You're
know.
gonna you still do it, but what I'm saying is the reason people going, well, why is that person not going? They're
Right.
still loving the music.
Yeah, that's
That
right. That's
music
right.
is the bit that keeps the soul going. I've
Yeah,
still got more to create. I'm unfinished.
right. It's the question is, how do you spend most of your days? Are you spending it in a feeling of vibrance?
Yeah,
And it's like, well, how do we spend, well, how do most of us spend most of our days? Well, we spend most of our days working. So there's two things. Now, interesting, you said earlier about doing what I love. Absolutely. I'm grateful today that I get to say that I do what I love. But still, here's the thing. No matter what job or work we're doing that we've shaped perfectly, quote unquote, to our calling or our gifts, right? There are still parts of our day, parts of our week, admin work or whatever, that is tasks that we quote unquote have to do that isn't, naturally, like if we had all the money in the world and all this, time, we would outsource all these different things, that kind of. So I want to say this before, there's this transition, right? From all of us are trying to do more of what we love. But during this transition, let's practice loving what we do.
lovely way to say that. So it's a beautiful way. It's just coming it back to
No,
front, And I think
yeah,
that's really important because you have to do stuff that seems mundane, but it's an opportunity for you to
everybody.
be present during those
That's
mundane
yes.
administrations. I had that day yesterday. I was like,
Yeah,
I've
sure.
got so many things. I've got so many
Yeah,
things I've got to pay. I've got to pay this bill, I've got to do this,
all of
I've
us
got to
have to do
speak to
that.
that person, I've got to do that. It took
No
me
matter,
it took me
like I
all
said,
day.
yeah, no matter how much, how large of a team we have or whatever, it's like even the CEO has to still do some things during their day that isn't, them, making big decisions or speaking or whatever it is. I mean, right now you and I are having this obviously makes both of us feel alive, but we're not doing this thing all day long. So this is why I have been, preaching the message of joyful productivity for all these years. And James, I'll say that, part of what happened in the, my transition, my breakdown, breakthrough was discovering this and starting to practice joyful productivity, which also is in part, large part why I've stayed healthy for so many years, is that, um, you know, like I said, every day all of us have to do administrative things or scary things or things that have risk in our work. Either things that have risk that are scary or anxiety producing, or things that are boring and tedious or frustrating, right? All of us, right? To be able to move our work forward, job, business, whatever it may be. So the question is, if we have to do those things, if it's just we can't outsource it right now, or for whatever reason, yeah, how are we going to show up in that moment? And so I tell people, listen, if you can pause at the start of those tasks and ask yourself, what quality would I like to embody as I do this boring, quote unquote, bookkeeping right now?
I'm just going to write that down.
Or,
Just like, what quality
yeah,
would I like to
yeah,
embody?
what quality would you like to embody? What quality can I embody? Because if you don't ask us, if we don't set that intention, the default quality is whatever we grew up with, which is delayed gratification.
Sure.
You've got to struggle and suffer your way to success. You've got to head down, you know, work hard on your homework before you can play. And if we looked around the library or the study hall when we grew up, you know, the good students were all looking like this, like they're, you know, they look like they're serious or they're, right? Like that's how we were supposed to work. Why can't we work with a face of joy, with a face of
It's,
lightness, with a body of relaxation? And even if it's so-called boring work, why couldn't we bring some curiosity to, like, if I'm doing bookkeeping, I don't like bookkeeping, it's like, why can't I bring some curiosity to the numbers? I wonder what this number means. You know, some of us, you know, I'm talking to you right now, we're recording this near tax time in the States. We all have to do taxes. Why couldn't we bring, is it possible to embody a different quality than frustration, boredom, tedium? Of course we can. This is our life.
I just wanted to say, I did my taxes back in January,
Yeah,
and
good for you.
so it's different. I think it's a different time than the US,
Oh,
right?
okay.
But
Yeah. Well, April is our due
it's
date.
your
Yeah.
one, yeah. So our one's January 31st, right, for the
Hmm.
UK. But the one that I did is like when I put get all my receipts ready.
Yes,
And what's this got to do with anything? It's got to do with the amount of well-being that can flow through you.
of course.
And I've
Of
noticed
course.
that times I used to think about finances and I was just like, oh, leave me alone. I want to
Right.
hide. But now I really embrace it. I decided to turn it on its head, a bit like what you said, you know, what if I turn up and show up differently to do this task that I don't really want to do? But
Yeah.
what if I just look at it differently? I love the quantum physics quote by Max Planck, which says, when you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at begin to change. Otherwise, you're looking at the
Mm,
way that you've always looked at it or been taught by your parents. And if
yes.
you want to break patterns and enjoy greater health and happiness, if that hasn't been something that's run in your family, or abundance, or prosperity, or success, if you want to turn that on your head, you have to begin to look at things differently. And everything that I am now, I was once the exact opposite, you know. And so I looked at myself and I was like, man, I've had to change so many characteristics of myself that I was dissatisfied with, so that I became more efficient, more organized, you know, felt more relaxed, less anxious, you know, more confident, all of these types of things. So when it came to doing taxes, like I put the music on when I'm doing the receipts, you know, I get the spreadsheets out. I have a nice cup of tea or whatever when I'm drinking. And if for some reason it feels too much, I go outside and just get the jump rope and skip for 5 minutes. And then when I'm ready, I'll come back in again. And so it doesn't feel like it's an absolute chore. I break it up into little bits. And so each time I do the receipts counting, it's actually quite fun for me because I log it all down. I do one column, happy days. If I need a break, go and take it, and then come back. And so when you know, when I ended up having to pay, I was like, okay, that's cool. That was a very easy experience, much easier than I used to give myself credit for, which was run away, it's too much, or whatever.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love that so much. It's you're using the external environment you're setting up an external environment that reminds you of the quality that you want to embody for that task. And that's
Absolutely.
brilliant. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and when it comes to the paying part of the thing, which people are like, oh, I don't want to leave it. This is the bit that used to really get me. And it's like, oh, if I pay that money, I'm going to be without now. There's going to be a lack. And this is obviously another point of well-being that's been cut off. It's like your valve is being closed. But the way to open the valve again, and this is, I really love one of your videos that you did, and I want to share it with the audience. George talks about flow in one of his videos, and he was talking about the essence of when he was a kid, that he didn't have many disciplines in place, and he used to play the piano, although very good, he never practiced. So he was very apologetic to his piano teacher, and all the other things at school. So at some level he created more and more discipline in his life. I can't remember where I was leading this to, but it was about the
No, yeah.
flow. It's just really important that the flow of what you do creates more well-being. And whenever you resist
Yeah.
something, you kind of cut off the flow of what could be. So when you actually end up needing to pay money for something, be thankful that you can pay it. And
Yes.
and then you've got to kind of have this trust. Now this is the thing with the well-being, that the universe, the source that you send it
Yes.
back to. If you can be
Yes.
thankful, and I learned this, I spent a lot of time in Japan, and in Japan there's a guy called Ken Honda who wrote this book called Happy Money. And he says that one of the wealthiest billionaires he ever interviewed said this: arigato in, arigato out, which means thank you for coming in, thank you for going out. And when I started practicing this, I was absolutely amazed that just thank you for coming in, thank you for going out would bring more, keep me in a state of flow. Whereas before I'd be
Yeah.
fearful or anxious to send
Yeah.
it out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's money is a way to connect humanity. If we look at it from a healthy perspective, it allows it essentially, when I'm paying money, I'm supporting somebody. You know, even if it's to a so-called big company, it's still a bunch of the people in that company that are being supported in their work. And I
You're
I
giving
pray,
someone a job, you're giving
yeah.
someone a
And I
reason
and
to
I
be.
and I pray that the money goes to support, the discovery, the further discovery of their calling and their vibrancy, and because we're all working it out, right? All of us, none of us, nobody wants to be in a dead end job or in a job they don't like. All of us are trying. All of us are trying
Yeah.
to bring more purpose and flow. But I want to go back to something you said just a minute ago about the discipline and the flow. I don't know if this is the same video I was thinking. By the way, I've now made over 1,000 videos on YouTube,
Wow.
so I don't
Guys, I'm
remember.
going to give you all the links to George's
Yeah,
stuff, right, that
I,
you'll have in
I,
the podcast. But his videos have
yeah.
just got some
And
really, really wonderful
thankfully, when you
content.
go to my YouTube channel, the first thing you'll see is a playlist of best videos. So you don't have to wait through 1,000. You can just watch the best ones based on ratio of likes to views. So, but the thing about discipline I've discovered, I have had such a love-hate relationship with discipline all my life. Like you mentioned, I was forced, I guess, to learn piano when I was a kid, and my God, what a practice of discipline to learn a musical instrument or any art that you have to practice, And I hated discipline for most of my life, and I didn't really discover how to love discipline until the last 10 years when I started understanding what joyful productivity was. So let me explain this very like mind-opening, heart-opening discovery that I learned, which is that you don't have to wait for flow. You can practice generating flow, which is and the
Say
same
that
thing
again.
with,
Say that again. This is
yeah.
a good one, right? So, and then give it a
You
bit of
you
context after
you
this.
don't have to wait for flow or creativity or well-being. You can practice generating flow, creativity, and well-being. And this is essentially what I have been working on for the past 10 years, more specifically the last 7 years, very actively. And this has changed my life. And I suspect you've discovered the same thing, which is why you've been feeling so well, for decades now. So the way I discovered it was, well, I had a business I had to support, I had to make it work. And so I learned that, gosh, whereas in a job, someone gave you the work, someone made you have discipline, deadlines created the flow because they were required,
It
just
was
like
kind
when
of
we were in
like flow
school.
versus force. So they were forcing you to have
Yes,
discipline rather than
yes,
you choosing your own
yes.
discipline.
And we all notice when something is forced on us, a deadline, right? We have to start the work. And then sometime during the period of the work, we hopefully find some flow, you
Yep.
know? I'm like, well, now that I have my own business, and entrepreneurs know this all the time, like we have to force ourselves, right? To do the work. But instead of forcing myself, I learned to say, well, what quality would I like to embody?
But what quality? And you're
Right?
going, I'd like to embody flow.
No, I like to embody flow. I like to embody joyful creativity, calm focus, whatever it may be. And I just practice it day by day. So I have this practice I called the energy reboot. And welcome all of you to go to Google and search energy reboot. And thankfully, if you these days my video shows up for energy reboot, and I walk you through the whole thing. And I practice this, James, not once a day or twice a day, not even once an hour. I practice this 3 to 4 times an hour, James, when
Right.
I'm
Okay. I've
working.
got to see this video. I have not seen this one actually.
Now, the reason why I can practice so often is because it only takes me 20 seconds to
Right.
practice it. And I urge all of you to please find or create a practice that is that fast for you to do, something like 20 or 30 seconds. Some of you might do some prayer, some of you might do some breathing, some of you might do some, like a quick meditation of some kind or a quick stretch, but some energy reboot that you really resonate with, that is that fast, that you can do frequently, because that's changed my life. And that has created the possibility of a joyful discipline that I now activate every day, multiple times a day. So because of that joyful discipline, I'm prolific with my work. I make more videos, write more things than most people, even in my industry, do. And I'm in a very competitive industry of other people who are marketers as well. And so anyway, that's that's
But
my little
but what,
spiel on that.
what I love about what you've just said here, because this is really important, is that you're able to give of yourself with more energy because you keep topping yourself up.
Yeah. Yes.
And
Yes.
if
Well put.
if you're not topping yourself up with energy by doing something which is a little discipline for you, and I've got so many that I do myself, and
Yeah.
everybody who comes and listens on this audience, I'm sure, is picking up. And that's what I'm always wanting to give you: new little reboots, give you new pick-me-ups that you can
Yes.
practically do.
Yes.
So you've got more energy, because it's when you've got more energy, it's kind of like you resonate with new good ideas.
Yeah.
And
And,
like before, I was really uncreative, it seems. Even though we're all kind of creative, you might not
yeah.
think that you are.
No, we
But
all are.
when I first started meditating, I started getting really good ideas.
Mm,
I was like, wow, I've got good ideas. That led me to want to create music. That led me to want to pick up the ukulele and learn how to play that.
wow.
That led me to writing poetry. That led me to writing. That
Yeah.
led me to being able to speak in ways that I'd never really spoken before.
Mm,
So, whatever those little pick me ups are for you, or those top ups that George was talking about, definitely find your own, find what works for you.
find it. You can create well-being. You can create energy. You can create flow at any time. If you practice, that muscle becomes stronger, and you truly become superhuman, because you realize more and more, my God, even this physical body is being constantly
I'm,
recreated
I'm quite
by,
intrigued, although I
yeah,
really want people to go and check out your energy reboot. Could you
yeah.
walk us through your energy reboot? If it's
Sure,
just
sure,
20
absolutely.
seconds, let's do it.
Yeah. And by the way, I have two versions of it that I've done over the years. I did my first version for several years. So I call my energy reboot one. And then the energy reboot two, I've been now doing for about, I think, a year and a half or so. And it's just because, and by the way, it's good to change it up every now and then,
Always.
so that it becomes, stays fresh and things like that. So this is why I always encourage everyone to make up their own. But essentially the way I'll do energy reboot too, because that's what I'm used to these days. It's essentially a couple of breaths, deep, gentle breaths that we take. And with each breath, we are also placing our hands in some position that makes us feel cared for and grounded and centered. And with each breath, we are also bringing a particular intention to mind. So I'll just walk you through it. And again, this is my reboot. I welcome everyone to modify it for themselves, whatever intention or phraseology most resonates with you. So I place my hands to my heart, feel my heart beating, and as I breathe gently and deeply, I say, "Thank you for having brought me here through all the ups and downs of life, all of that. I've been brought here. How amazing and how grateful am I for that?" And then I place my hands gently to my gut and I breathe again gently. Just take breaths gently and deeply as we go. And I say, "Thank you that I'm going to be brought through all the ups and downs that are coming up in my life that I can't even imagine right now. All the ups and downs, I'm going to be brought through all of that, all the way home." And then I put my hands out in this kind of a receiving position. And I say, "Thank you for being here, Spirit, surrounding me, within me, all throughout, my body and soul. Thank you for being here, supporting me with kindness and healing always." And then I stretch, have a nice stretch, and I think about the practice of the quality that I'm embodying right now in this next task. So that's pretty much it. Now
That's a lot. It's a thank you, and there's intent.
yes.
And you're actually activating a few different chakras there, right?
Yeah, exactly. There are things happening there I don't even realize
And like I don't know why, but just all because I started meditating, I just started understanding stuff, and I'm like,
right.
wow. It's kind of like someone's giving me a computer program, and I get
That's right.
JavaScript, and I didn't
Yes.
understand what it was before.
Right.
But for anyone who's kind of new to this, but what George is doing is activating his heart energy, which is electromagnetic. Second of all, he's touching the emotional chakra, which is basically saying, this is where my center is, this is where my
Yes.
creativity is.
Yes.
Next, he's open to receiving, when he's opened his
Yes.
arms up, right?
Yes.
Which says, I'm open to receiving more energy,
Yeah.
from all that is,
Yeah.
the source of all that is, the universe.
Yes.
And bring it on, I'm ready to receive. And then the
That's right.
stretches is just like, right, okay, let's see what happens next, I'm ready.
Yes.
So
Yes.
again, it's just like positioning. And whether
Yes.
you're an athlete doing this, or
Yeah.
whether you're an entrepreneur, business owner,
That's right.
and even though George has this beautiful centered heart space energy, he is also an absolute warrior when it comes to business. So
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
underestimate
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
power that comes from gentleness. This is the thing
Beautiful.
that I'm always fascinated by. It's like some people are very gentle, but do not underestimate how powerful they are. It's just because there's no resistance in between. But because we've been shown movies where the fight always wins,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
the misalignment right there,
it's
right?
interesting because I think about the Shaolin monk or someone who's like some martial arts master, in a cave in the mountains or somewhere, where when you approach them and they ask them to teach you martial arts, they're not going to be like, the typical kind of like Cobra Kai kind of martial arts, but
Yeah.
it's more like this like Zen master who like a Yoda, who like they can almost like defeat someone with just one arm with a calm
Yeah.
face, because they're so powerful with the
I
practice.
grew up being an absolute Bruce Lee fan, right? And as and
Yeah.
as I as I've
Right.
evolved being a Bruce Lee fan, there's one scene that that takes it for me more than anything else, and it's the bit in Enter the Dragon where I'm sure you've seen this movie, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Early on. Yeah.
he is cornered off in this room of mirrors,
Oh
and there's
yeah.
no way out. So what he does is he just gets into his meditative place and just sits there with his nunchucks around the back of his neck and just begins to just gets into a meditation because he knows there's nowhere else he can go. And sometimes, which is like pure surrender, pure acceptance. And, sometimes we need to do that. So if you're listening, just think to yourself, sometimes you just need to surrender to the moment, to what it is, accept it completely. And George's little reboot is also like a beautiful moment of acceptance to say, hey, I'm grateful for this moment and bring it on.
Yeah. And I just want to also quickly say that the reboot, whenever I teach it, it's longer than 20, 30 seconds, but in practice itself, I do it quite quickly. Like I said, about 20 seconds. And I do encourage all of you to, again, find or create something where I find it helpful to have some kind of like hand motions or some kind of body motions, because then it grounds us in that practice. And it reminds us that we're actually doing it, And so, anyway,
It
I
reminds you
hope
that
this
you're
helps.
just not in your head thinking
No, it's not
stuff.
in the
You're
head.
in the body, because
You're in the body.
when you're in
That's
the
right.
body, you really feel it.
Yeah.
George, it's been an absolute joy speaking with you. I feel like I could go on for ages. I
Oh,
feel like we
yeah.
have got
Kindred
untapped. There's more
spirits. Yes.
stuff to be able to talk
No,
about.
grateful. Yeah.
I'll put all the links where people can find you. But George is an amazing, authentic business coach. He really does speak from his heart. And George has given us some invaluable wisdom that he shared with us today. And if you'd like to know more about George, you can find him at georgekao.com. But I'll have all the links and stuff.
You could just Google my name. I'm grateful that I show up there too.
You're fine.
Yeah.
George, thank you so much. It's been a real joy talking to you. I look forward to talking with you again. I'm sure there's a lot more that we can discuss. Sure. But I hope you've enjoyed today's podcast. George is this week's super soul model, and he brings solopreneurs joy, productivity, and he really speaks from his heart. George is the real deal. Thank you so much indeed, George. Much appreciated.
Thank you, James. Thanks, everyone.